Hey, what's up, everyone? Carl Williams here with Williams' Mind and Muscle Mechanics. Hope everybody's having a good day today. Hope everybody's having a good week. It's Friday. We made it. It's the weekend. I wanted to take a few minutes today to basically talk about when it's okay to sort of push through the pain and go to the gym anyways, or play a sport anyways, and when you really should take a rest day. Because it's, for the most part, it's common sense. You know what I mean? Obviously, you can't go do bicep curls if you have a broken arm, stuff like that. So broken bones, stuff like that. Those are pretty obvious. But when it comes to muscles, sometimes, you know what I mean, some people with just the dullest of aches is enough to worry them that I shouldn't work that out because I'm going to tear something. So I want to kind of try to shed a little bit of light on that. And basically the best way to do it is basically build yourself a little sort of like a mental scale. You know what I mean, on how and sort of like scale out the pain, right? If it's a pain that's You barely notice it unless you're moving the muscle, or even when you do move the muscle, it's just maybe just a light little dull little, it's not debilitating in any way. You can totally push through that pain. You know what I mean? And if you're worried, you can maybe put a little bit of heat on it before you go to the gym, and just to sort of make sure it's nice and loose, make sure it's nice and warmed up, and then after, put a little bit of ice on it after your workout. To try to reduce any sort of inflammation, because that's usually all it's going to be. It's just usually trauma is something that's going to cause that. I don't mean trauma and crazy trauma, you're going to bleed out trauma. I mean just light trauma. You know what I mean? Like a bruise. Maybe you bumped your arm on something and there's a little bit of bruising there, and that's causing you a dull ache. It's like you don't gotta worry about a bruise. It's all good. So basically, yeah, that's anywhere from we're gonna put that like maybe like a 1 to a 3, right? And you got like a 3 to a 5 or a 6, where it's like, you know what I mean? It's a little bit more than a dull ache, and when you start to engage the muscle, it's you're really. You're sort of feeling a pain, you know what I mean? Especially let's say you're doing a bicep curl and you're feeling that stiffness somewhere like right around where the tendon should be, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. I would worry about that a little bit more, you know what I mean? Like if it's causing you pain when you're using it, and like pain, not a dull ache, especially when you start to use the muscle, that you should be a little bit more cautious about, you know what I mean? Maybe make sure if you are going to work it out, make sure you give it a real good stretch beforehand, real good dynamic stretches, get it nice and warmed up, and again, using heat and stuff like that to warm it up. But when you're getting into that sort of thing, it's probably best to be careful. We're getting into, you might want to just rest it, you know what I mean? Or at the very least, you maybe lighten up the load, and work it out light, you know what I mean? It's like that's when, usually that's a warning sign, you know what I mean? When you're using something and it's causing you like a pain, not quite debilitating yet, but enough to it's sharp enough that it's making you like, oof, I'm worried about that. Well, then you should consider maybe, going a little bit lighter, taking a rest day, maybe working something else that day. And then we're gonna get into when you're getting into up over like a 6, now we're talking about pain, you know what I mean? Like if you can't lift your shoulder or lift your arm up because your shoulder is without basically wincing in pain, you definitely don't want to work out that shoulder because there's something wrong there. You definitely need to take a rest day and see if it starts to recover. And then after a week or so, 2 weeks, if you notice it's still not getting better, there's probably something a bit more serious in there. So you definitely don't want to take the chance of if you do have a slight tear, going into the gym and making it worse, you know what I mean? So definitely don't, if you assess your pain at a 6 or more, do not push through that pain. But anything like a 6 or less, you know what I mean? It's more or less, it's, like I said, from 1 to 3, you could definitely just push through that pain. From a 3 to a 6, that's where caution comes in, you know what I mean? Be careful and consider taking a rest day. And from a 6 and beyond, if you're actually but without even really using the muscle, it's just causing you pain, you know what I mean? You can't lay down properly or this and that. Definitely don't go to the gym and try to push through that. And it could seem fairly obvious, you know what I mean? But some people just really like I said, some people, it's more or less the dull aches that I'm trying to address today. Obviously most people know that if you're in excruciating pain, you're not going to go to the gym. Most people aren't that mentally tough anyways. If they're in excruciating pain, they're not going to go to the gym. You know what I mean? It's like it's easier to skip the gym than it is to find the drive to go for some people. You know, if you're in a lot of pain, you're definitely, you know, a lot of people are going to skip the gym anyways. So I don't need to tell you that. It's more about these dull aches, like your 1 to 3, right? Where it's like even when you're using it, it's just you barely notice the pain. It's just enough to let you know it's there. Like you don't have to worry about that. You can push through that. It's more like the aches and pains that when you're using. You know, when you're doing a bicep curl or when you're doing a bench press, when you're in the process of using the muscle, that's when you start to you start to notice this. Okay, that's not quite right. You know, that you should proceed with caution, right? And like I said, anything beyond that, where you're just in pain, don't push through pain, right? Like if you're in pain and it's debilitating, take a rest day. So yeah, hope that clears things up a little bit. And you know, if you like my videos, like and subscribe, and keep kicking ass, everyone. Have a good day.